welcome back to the sultry sounds of the podcast Bozos. You've made it to Season 3, Episode 1, Part 2 of PodcastBozo, where you came just in time to join us in a conversation about quantum physics, free will, and more. Here, with me, as always, we have locally renowned beer server, Sean, and celebrated artist and animator, Eli. My name is JJ, but you can call me Bobby Paradise, and as always, it's good to be here with y'all. I know that this seems a little out of the ordinary. We got 2 episodes in 1 week, but this is something we're going to start working on. If we go over 3 hours, we don't want to constrain ourselves. So if we go over 3 hours, we're going to cut it in half, release it in 2 chunkable segments, if you will. I want to mention first that this podcast is supposed to be a group effort, and we want to hear from every one of our listeners. It makes it more fun for us. I think it makes it more fun for you guys. So please visit podcastbozo.com or our social accounts using @PodcastBozo and chime in on our conversations. We will do our best to engage with you online. And since we have you trapped here now, please donate to our Bozo fund and we will give you a shout out, read whatever you leave in the donation message, or even write you a little story. Up to you. I think it's a fair trade-off. We want to use that money for advertising, growth, and some alcohol too here and there. So thank you all for listening, and let's jump into this topic.
So you're talking about what? You're bitching about the sale you shot. Some son of a bitch that doesn't want to buy. Somebody doesn't want what you're selling. Some broad you're trying to screw and so forth. Let's talk about something important. Are they all here? I don't care. I'm going anyway. Let's talk about something important. Hey, put that coffee down. Coffee is for closers only. You think I'm fucking with you? I am not fucking with you. I'm here from downtown. I'm here from Mitch and Murray, and I'm here on a mission of mercy. Your name's Levine? You call yourself a salesman? You son of a bitch. You certainly don't, pal. Because good news is you're fired. Bad news is all you've got is just 1 week to regain your job, starting tonight. Starting with tonight's sit. Oh, have I got your attention now? Good. Because we're adding a little something to this month's sales contest. Now, as you all know, first prize is a Cadillac Eldorado. Anyone want to see second prize? Second prize is a set of steak knives. Third prize is you're fired. Do you get the picture? Are you laughing now, buddy? You got leads. Mitch and Murray paid good money. Get their names to and sell them. You cannot close leads you're given. You cannot close shit. You are shit. Hit the bricks, pal, because you better beat it. You are nothing. The leads are weak. The weeds are fucking leak. You're weak. I've been in this business 15 years. Fuck you. That's my name. You know why, mister? Because you drove a Hyundai here tonight and I drove an $80,000 BMW. That's my name. Your name is wanting. And you can't play a man's game. You can't close him. And you go home and tell your wife your troubles. Because only one thing counts in this life. Get them to sign on the line which is dotted. You hear me? You hear me? A, B, C. Always be closing. Always be closing. A, I, D, I. Attention, interest, decision, action, attention. Do I have your attention? Interest. Are you interested? I know you are because it's fuck or walk. You hit the bricks. Decision. Have you made your decision for Christ? And action. Get out there. You've got the prospects coming in. You think they came in to get out of the rain? Guy doesn't walk on the lot unless he wants to buy something. Sitting out there waiting to give you their money. Are you going to take it? Are you man enough to take it? What's the problem, pal? You. Moss. You see this watch? You see this watch? That watch cost more than your car. I made $970,000 last year. How much did you make? You see, pal, that's who I am. And you're nothing. Nice guy, I don't give a shit. Good father, fuck you. Go home, play with your kids. You want to work here? Blows. You think this is abuse? You think this is abuse, you cocksucker? You can't take this? How can you? How can you take it on a seat? You don't like it? Leave. I can go out there tonight with the same materials you got and make $15,000. Tonight in 2 hours. Can you? Can you? Go and do likewise. AIDA. Get mad, you sons of bitches. Get mad. You know what it takes to sell real estate? It takes brass balls to sell real estate. Go and do likewise, gents. Money's out there. You pick it up, it's yours. You don't, I have no sympathy for you. You want to go out on those sits tonight and close? Close. It's yours. If not, you're going to be shining my shoes. Bunch of losers sitting around in a bar. Oh yeah, I used to be a salesman. It's tough racket. These are the new leads. These are the Glengarry leads. And to you, they're gold. And you don't get them because you wouldn't know what to do with it, with them. Because you wouldn't know what to do with it if you got it. And the answer to your question, pal, why am I here? I came because Mitch and Murray asked me to. They asked me a favor. I said the real favor, follow my advice, fire your fucking ass because a loser is a loser. Thank you.
Was that... I couldn't put my thumb on that. Was that... was Wolf of Wall Street or...
Scene.
I think
the
Jerry
Third?
Maguire.
Jerry Maguire?
I don't know.
Oh, Big Fat Liar. That was Big Fat Liar.
Big
with
Fat Liar. Tangled.
Paul Giamatti
Tangled.
and Amanda Bynes. Yo, Big Fat Liar. That was a great monologue. Cheek. Out of nowhere with that.
Was that actually Big Fat Liar?
Yeah.
No, it wasn't.
Oh, it wasn't Big Fat Liar.
No, it wasn't.
Said cocksucker.
Yeah.
It's a Disney movie.
You got dyed blue. That's pretty offensive. I don't know.
Whew, that was fun.
Was
Wow.
that Wolf of Wall Street, Cheek?
No, it's a famous play called Glengarry Glen Ross that was made into a movie. And Alec Baldwin does that monologue. And I think it's one of the greatest monologues of all time.
I've heard of that. I don't know why I haven't seen that yet.
I haven't. And it brings up the question of who would see something called Glenn. Like
Glengarry
Glenn is
Glen
the
Ross.
most... Glengarry, too.
It's the name
It's
of
like
a
the
real
most
estate
suburban
brokerage.
name. It just sounds so suburban.
Both of their names are Glenn.
That's just the name of brokerage. I don't really know.
Oh.
Glengarry.
You love that movie though?
It's just a fascinating scene about salespeople who are, when they're at the end of their rope, willing to, break all the rules and, bend their ethics and what they're willing to do to, make it happen when they need to make it happen.
And just like how harsh that life can be. Like, I feel like that's a good example of how bad sales life could be, especially in like the 80s where you're
That's exactly what it is. So like the scene, if you've seen the movie or this, it's, a sales floor of like Ford, like sorry on their ass, like, oh, woe is me atmosphere. And then Alec Baldwin comes in, the guy who I just played, and, was sent in from downtown to like give them a motivational speech about making some fucking sales and how to be a salesperson.
I like that. That whole pressure situation. That is very Wolf of Wall Street. Like I get how you thought that was.
It's very Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah.
And
It's
the
very
moments,
big fat liar too.
the moments where I was like,
You were very blue.
where I was like, oh, like, who am I? Like, I come down here, I make $970,000. Like the guys in the background during the movie are like, who's this guy? Oh, who am I, motherfucker? Like, I'll tell you who the fuck I am.
Jake, you killed it.
You
came
drove
in
a
with the
Hyundai. I
performance.
drove an 80,000 BMW, cocksucker.
Jake,
Well,
you ever think about getting into acting?
I'll tell you what, and I haven't told this to many people. I don't regret. I had a lovely high school career of being a very successful soccer star, but I think I could have been a great actor, and I have so much love and respect and pride for the theater, and I would have throw my ring in the hat. Like, is there an adult theaters club around here or something? Like, sign me up.
Jake,
I guarantee there is.
Young, and what are you talking about? You're just entering the game. You can absolutely
Cheek, some of the best
pursue a
actors of
career.
our time were your age when they decided that they wanted to be the best actors of all time.
You got the gusto, my man, though. Gusto.
Cheek, you make $90,000 just out there on the law with Gary's leads.
I go out there tonight with the same materials you got. I make $15,000.
Gary's leads.
Gary's leads.
Oh,
And
boy.
back to quantum mechanics.
I butchered
And
the
that
end there.
is-
I apologize.
Nah, you didn't.
Cheek,
you
the
didn't.
only thing that we got cut up on was that the part that you said, "Oh shit!"
Yeah.
Like I
That's
wouldn't,
the only
I
part.
would have known otherwise. You should have played it as a stutter or something like that. But no, Cheek, it was good. It was real good, and I'm glad that our listeners got to. That's how they were reintroduced after the Pete break. It must have been
Anyway.
shocking.
Some free advertising there for Glengarry Glen Ross. Go check it out if you haven't heard of it. Alec Baldwin's monologue is phenomenal.
Out of 10
Ve-
cheeks, what does the entire movie get?
Question.
Not like it's not a good movie. It's not like you're not gonna sit down and be like, wow, that was a sick movie. But like you see that it was supposed to be a play. It was written as a play. It's supposed to be performed as a play. Like there are two settings, and the settings are like the office and like a fucking telephone booth down the street in like a diner or something.
Right.
Like it's
So rate 3 things out of 10 cheeks. First one being the play, then the movie out of 10 cheeks, and then the speech out of 10 cheeks.
speech out of 10 cheeks is 9 out of 10 cheeks. No problem. Movie is
Easy.
like,
no questions.
5 cheeks out of 10 cheeks. It's not a good movie. They tried to make a good play into a good movie. It didn't work out the way that it should have. The play is, I've never seen the play in person. I've only seen the movie. I just know that it was written as a play.
Was it revered as a good play? Do you know?
Yeah, it's a very well-known play.
So if
So like
if you left
7.5
someone else and
cheeks.
tried, that's what I was gonna ask. All right, great to know. Also, I would love to
Glengarry
go
Glen
to.
Ross. And I love Alec Baldwin. Like you can I didn't do my own interpretation of that monologue. I tried to do it the way he did it,
And out of 10 cheeks, how well did you nail the Alec Baldwin version of that speech?
Like a 6.5.
All right.
Selling yourself short.
I think you're being modest. I think maybe we'll do some bonus content at the end of this season when we've done enough monologues. We'll do side by sides, see who matched up the best.
Maybe instead of yeah.
All right. Well,
Maybe I'll just like record a bunch of monologues and put them together. Me just talking into the camera.
Cheek. I would love to get that. I would love to receive that video from you.
All of
Did you
season
feel
4
like
is
I was
just
talking to
Cheeks
you,
monologues.
Levine, and you, Moss?
I
Absolutely.
thought I felt pressure on me. I felt like I wasn't doing my job as a salesman.
Did you put the coffee down when
You're
I
getting
told you to?
defensive, Jay.
I was getting defensive. I was spitting and scoffing. I laughed one time because I didn't know how to cope with the pressure that you were giving me.
Yeah, you have gotten booted that day.
Yeah, I would have been fired. That's for sure. I would have gotten the third place prize, which is to lose my job. Yeah.
I probably
You a
would have
good
gotten the
dad?
kitchen knives.
Fuck you.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Exactly.
So who got the Eldorado? Is that you, Cheek? You took the Eldorado for yourself?
Cheek, you already drive a Beamer. A BMW. I forget which one. Are those the same thing?
Yeah, those are the same. I don't actually drive one of those cars, but
Well, your character did, though.
my character drives an 80,000 BMW. You drove a Hyundai here. Fuck you.
Yeah. So why would you need to win the other car? Like, aren't you already driving a nice car? What are you going to do with that
I
extra
came
car?
down here to motivate you, sorry lot.
By stealing the car that we could win?
No one's stealing the car. The car is there for you to take, JJ. But you
I
can't
want
make
the
a sale
Eldorado.
to save your fucking life.
I wanted the new car, but I got fired. I don't know how that's motivational.
Here's the good news. You got 1 week to win your job back. 1 week. And it
So
starts
during that
tonight
time, am I not
with
making
this
money?
sit-in.
I fucking hate this job.
I even remember signing up for it.
I never even applied for this job. I don't know how I got here.
I'm a physicist.
Yeah.
I work on quantum mechanics.
Wait.
used to
I
have
was
the
in the middle
life.
of a quantum mechanics lecture and we're talking about sales.
I thought we were. I'm so confused. I'm
Buy
so
high,
confused.
sell low. That's how you
No,
do it,
it's
baby.
the other way around.
No.
You
Trust me.
buy
Trust me.
high, sell low.
Buy
That's-
high, sell low. You want to get rid of as much money as fast as possible because we all know that money is going down the drain. We don't want any of it. It's a new
Mhm.
currency. Being broke is the new currency.
Money's the new Bitcoin. Money's going down the drain.
Don't want none of it.
Yep.
Bitcoin
Yeah,
these
that's
days. It's trading at like $40,000 a coin.
Yeah, but you don't have to buy it per coin. You buy it per like percentage of a coin.
I know, but
God,
got a
that
coin
should be a
on- I
topic.
got a-
in
I got
its
a
own.
coin
I don't
on
know
me.
jack about bit.
Ethereum, that's the one that's going up these days.
Ethereum.
that should be one of our topics for the future is cyber currency.
Cryptos, blockchain,
Cryptocurrency.
that shit.
Cryptos, yeah.
Eldorado.
You smell that shit, dude.
You smell those cryptos, dude.
Smell that cyber shit, dude.
Oh boy. All right. Cheek. I smelled that shit that you dealt us, and
I know it wasn't your sewers because you got those fixed.
that was some stinky shit, and we appreciate it.
I
But
feel like you guys didn't
let's
like
try to. Cheek, I love that.
What are you
I love
talking
that.
about?
What are you talking about? I love that. That was It was your it was your segment, or what do we call it? What do we call this? Skit. It was your skit idea, and I think you nailed it. And I want to give you all of them. I want to hear you do all of them.
Yeah, season 4 is going to be strictly cheek monologues.
It's gonna be what we have an hour and a half per episode on average. It'll be nearly 20 hours of Cheek just doing monologues from movies you may or may not have seen.
And now this one is Tim Allen, Christmas with the Cranks. You're going to start getting desperate.
Yeah. Oh, all right.
I'll play Wilson above the fence. You can never see my chin. Or what is it? You can never see his face? Or what is it?
In what?
You can never see his chin. From Home Improvement with Tim Allen, his neighbor Wilson, who's always standing on the fence giving him advice, but you can never see his chin.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Did you
if
watch
don't get it, it's
Home
fine.
Improvement, Jay? That was a very awkward show for
Yeah.
very awkward people. I believe it. That
Did you watch it?
Of course not. It's one of those channels that when you're surfing through everything that you land on and you're just embarrassed that you even landed on it.
Yeah, yeah. It's just like, guy, this is the place where entertainment goes to die.
Yeah. I can't believe I even laid my eyes on that.
I get that. So let's get this shit over with. I'm eager to get you guys to a place where you understand kind of where I'm coming from on
Quantum
this
entanglement?
tangible at. Yeah. Honestly, I'm embarrassed that we're not there yet. But this is how long it takes to understand this concept, because it is complicated and people spend their whole life studying it, and I've been looking into this a long time.
Good, because I was about to
guess-
say it's ridiculous that we don't understand it fully within the hour and a half we've been recording this episode.
You think you would have, like you think this should be something that in 10 minutes we'd all be professionals on, but it's one of those things where you can't be, unfortunately. I want to take us back to the episode about truth. And do you guys remember that, E? Did we update your system yet, or?
No, you're still running on the season 2 model.
Which E are we running here?
It's long hair E, but
I can jack into the season 3 one after this, though.
All right. Do you remember what? Remember we were talking about this. What excited you about that? What excited you about quantum entanglement and the chills that you get for it? Like, what is the truth?
If I'm jacking back into season 2, I'd talk about the multiverse theory and how all possibilities of a certain situation are happening at once, but only one is actually happening because it's being observed.
Yes.
Per universe.
So maybe I structured this backwards, but that is the end goal of this conversation. Cheek, do you have input on that?
I just don't remember talking about that in the truth episode, but
all right. Well, we verged on it. But
no.
Yeah, so the end result of this conversation is that, like, the last thing that we touch on is that it has reasonably been proven that there are multiple universes. And a new universe is created every time you make a decision or you interact with anything or anything.
Is there a
interacts with you.
universe that I'm not overweight?
I mean, you're not overweight, but there is a universe where you're president. There's a universe where you're a successful jazz musician. There's a universe where you don't need glasses. There's a universe where right now you're the same exact thing, same exact place, but you don't have a beard. Like, it's a miracle. It's a miracle.
Cheek, this is the universe where you can start seeing.
It's beautiful.
It's all happening right before our eyes.
But the idea is that any of these things are happening, and this might sound to someone who doesn't care, someone who's like, this is all philosophical, what does this matter? I still have my day-to-day job. This might be the kind of thing where you're just like, whatever. But this is important. And it has implications on our real life. Like this, believe me, it's important. Listen to me. It's fucking important. But it's important because basically what we're discovering is that as much certainty as we had in the universe at the beginning of physics and Newtonian physics, when we had gravity and cause and effect and determination, that kind of thing, as much certainty as we had during that time, what we're finding out now is that there is this missing variable, this mystery to the universe that we have no tangible concept. We can't grab it. And there are three concepts of how this universe is run. One is called the Copenhagen, one is called the many worlds, and one is called the hidden variable. Hidden variable is probably the most tangible aspect of understanding what's going on in this universe. It's Einstein's way, because he made theory of relativity based on the speed of light. And he was basically saying that, like, the quantum mechanics contradicts that theory, because quantum mechanics says that when two particles interact, they create a joint waveform that predicts not only where one of the particle is, but as soon as you know where that one particle is, it then immediately makes the other particle appear, which makes information known across literally the entire universe instantly. And so he couldn't contemplate with this. He couldn't grapple with this. And he was saying, well, then there must be some kind of hidden hidden variables that don't factor that we don't know yet. The same way that like in the olden days when you used to flip a coin, when it was in the air, it was unknown until you looked at the result. And so, but nowadays we know physics enough to, if you knew every variable of that, you would be able to predict the side of the coin that it fell on. But so the same thing he's saying with these electrons, where these electrons can be anywhere at any point until you actually open the box, until you actually turn on the device and you see where that electron is. That's when you know where it is. That became overruled, even though Einstein created it, but that was overruled because some of that defied the laws of the speed of light and things like that. So there was no way to logically conclude, to build evidence against, like there's no air velocity, there's no interaction theory, there's nothing like that to be able to say that like, oh, this is why this ends up here. This is how we predict where this electron ends up. This is how we predict the electron's momentum. There's no way to actually do that until you observe it. And so that was kind of ruled out because it would, if you did have variables that led to that conclusion, it would deny the laws of the speed, like of relativity. And so these rules kind of have to fall within the laws of relativity. So the next one was the Copenhagen Theorem. That basically says if you look at a wavelength, if you follow my fingers, you go across, it's like a heartbeat. You go up and down and then back across. And maybe it's a couple up and downs, and maybe it's all ups and then flatlining. But wherever that is, there are calculations to determine where you may be likely to find an electron. That doesn't mean you won't find it in the low peaks or the high peaks. You'll just be more likely to find it in the high wavelengths. Copenhagen is saying that as soon as you look at this wavelength, this probability spectrum, this interference pattern, as soon as you look at it, that's when the atom comes into existence and casts off and creates its own path. So that is, in a more tasteable sense, the tree falling in the forest. You can go into a forest and all the trees could be up. You go in the forest and all the trees could be down. But most likely, you go into a forest and some of the trees be up, some of the trees will be down, right? When you go in and look at it. But regardless, Copenhagen's law was that none of that existed until you looked at it. That's basically kind of along lines of a simulation theory, where you're saying nothing, like the computing power required to render the world in front of you is only accessed when you look at it. It's kind of like Minecraft.
So yeah, in a video game where as soon as you turn to the side, then it starts rendering.
Right.
The one that you talked about beforehand, was that the hidden world?
Mm-hmm. We haven't touched on that one yet.
No, the open variable then.
Oh, hidden variables.
Hidden variable.
Yeah. So that's the one that you can't necessarily... That was pretty much disproven.
That was... Okay.
Copenhagen is another way of thinking that is still not disproven because you get into a philosophical factor because there are unknown... There are things that either we don't know or we'll never know. And a lot of people accept that this is kind of something that we'll never know. And that variability is actually a part of our universe, and we're not willing to accept it because this variability of the electron path is something that you want to put your finger on. You want to say it exists in this one part because I can see it, but it literally does not exist until you see it. And that's the Copenhagen way of thinking. That something magical happens when the observer turns their eye to the particle or to the event.
That seems like a common theme.
How do you
observation? That observation creates your reality almost.
Well, that's the diving into entanglement. The one, and so what you're saying there,
you and I know that back in New York, 30 miles southwest of Syracuse, there's a lake there.
Mm-hmm.
Does that lake not exist unless I'm looking at that lake?
Unless someone...
Well, more likely what happened is that lake...
What if I'm on the phone with my dad who lives on the lake And while I don't observe the lake, we're talking, and at the same time, he's looking at the lake. Can I accept that that lake is there?
Well, you've inversely become entangled with the existence of the lake, but more exactly what has happened is that you brought the lake into existence by observing it for the first time. So there is a world where you never observed that lake; it never came into existence, and that lake never exists in your life. But by the first time you see that lake, you collapse that waveform, as they say. You take away all the possibilities of there not being a lake, or it being a river, or it being a shallow lake, or it being a deep lake, all those things, and all the things that would lead into that scientifically, because you still have to follow the rules of physics and geography and geology and that kind of thing. But there is a possibility that there is not a lake there one day. You go over there and it's a swamp. And that's the first time you see it. And for you, that branches off your reality where that thing is a swamp. And that is the Copenhagen method, where you see it and that becomes a reality. The many worlds one is the one I grasp onto most, and honestly the internet grasps onto most, and it is the most Marvel way of looking at it. It is the Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse way of looking at it. It's the theory that everything is possible at once. Everything is happening at once. Everything within the realm of physics. Like, there are still physics that we understand that, like, Cheek, you're not going to be pregnant in one realm, you know? Well, that's actually not true. There is a realm where you are a girl and you're pregnant. More likely, there's not
happen now.
Yeah. Alakazam.
Alakazam. Cheek's pregnant.
Cheek and Hannah +8, but more likely, like, you're not going to be. There's no reality where you are a planet, right? Like, there's a spectrum of things that can branch off in probability wise. So there's this situation where, like, you were born a girl because the atoms collide differently and they existed differently in the time that your parents had sex, that kind of thing, Cheek.
Ew.
Yeah. It's pretty gross. But yeah, so I think that what that kind of concludes is that for me, the many worlds theory is the one that resonates most with me, and it's the one I want to be the most true. But none of these are disproven except for the hidden variables, which is disproven, I think. But Copenhagen and many worlds, they can't be disproven. It's a philosophical theory that intersects with physics. And basically what it's saying is that, like, you can observe an atom at any point, but before that, you have no idea where it is. If you're trying to observe an atom, predict where an atom is, you can statistically say it will be in this range of places, but you have no idea where an electron atom may be. And so the end result is that you end up watching where it ends up, and wherever it ends up influences the next path that it may spend. So once again, going back to the slit experiment, let's go to a car, right? Let's go to a car, which is also a practical example. If you're sitting, if a car drives by you on a straight road and you see it kind of out of the corner of an eye, and at the end there's a dead end that either goes left or right, and you don't look where it goes, how do you know which way it went, right? And it could have gone both ways. But if you look and it goes right, there's another universe where that car went left.
So you say.
I mean, that is flat out proven. That is flat out proven.
According to you.
Let's run through that one again. If someone's driving the car, Cheek sees it, take a left. In that exact moment, there's another universe where it takes a right.
So the idea
does that take into account the person who's driving and what they're seeing and all that?
You're treating the car more like an inanimate object in this case.
Okay.
If you add someone in the car, it could still be true, but it makes it a little more complex.
Well, I think it's more than likely that there's somebody in the car.
There's definitely someone in the car, but the fact of that matter doesn't matter, because if you're considering where you're considering the fact that the observation of it is the only thing that makes it real for you, because the concept of superposition, or the fact of superposition, is that every atom appears everywhere at all times. So just like what's his name? Schrodinger's cat in the experiment, that decaying atom is both decayed and not decayed on that first day. And so therefore the mechanism is triggered and not triggered, and therefore the cat is dead and not dead, because there is a probability that is associated with the position of every atom, and therefore extrapolated to every person, that everything is happening at the same time. And so superposition says that it doesn't matter which path the electron takes through the slits, because it's not taking one of those paths, it's actually taking both. And that's why on the other side it makes a probability wave when you shoot 1,000 at it, because the only thing that matters is the point that you look at it. Because until you look at it, it is existing everywhere. And that can be scaled all the way up to anything that you do and see on a daily basis. So like if you ever have gotten in a close, like almost car accident, right? Like you go through you go through a green light, someone tries to turn ahead of you, doesn't, just barely makes it, you almost hit them, you have to pull over and take a deep breath afterwards. That situation, there is another situation where you went head on with that person and you died.
Say you're driving home down East Lake Road with your dad, and a deer out of nowhere decides to jump into the side of your car. In some universes that happened, and in others it didn't. But in my universe, that deer jumped into the side of your car and hit you.
That we share the same universe in that aspect, Cheek.
So what you're saying is we were lucky enough to exist in that same universe where
Hip killed 15
killed
deer
a lot of deer
in high school. We were lucky enough to live in a universe where not only did Hip kill deer with his car, but his dad bought a brand new car and he totaled his car on a deer.
Can we take a tangent for a second?
Yeah.
Jay, I just want to mention during that group group chat we had with our friends during halftime of last Bills game, I'm pretty sure Hip's dad doesn't remember me. Or maybe all of us. He was either very confused or very drunk as to what was going on while we were FaceTiming him.
To give everyone some context, this is our best friend and his dad, and we spent a lot of our 50% of our drug nights. We could be superimposed or superpositioned at Hip's house about 50% of the time while we were drinking, and those times we would talk to Mr. Hipple, and I consider Mr. Hipple to be one of my favorite people.
You enjoy those beans, son.
You enjoy those beans, son. But we did talk to him. We talked to all the boys over group FaceTime one night, and Mr. Hipple happened to be put on screen.
Saturday.
Yeah. And the screen was turned to Mr. Hipple, and there's no way he doesn't know who we are. There's no way. He was either drunk or feeling awkward about someone pointing a camera at him, you know, like I have that feeling too when someone else is FaceTiming and they turn it and put the front camera on you and you can't even see who you're talking to, and you're just kind of like, you say some things and then and you don't know when it's going to end or when they're going to turn it around. Like, I feel like that's kind of it's kind of like a deer in headlights situation.
Well,
so you were a deer in headlights in front of the deer in the headlights killer's dad.
Wow. How the tables have turned around the feet and the shoes that are on the other foot.
That is quantum entanglement.
That is
finest. That is no joke quantum entanglement, because the idea of quantum entanglement is that two particles that are individually acting interfere and then they go their own separate ways. But if you observe one of those particles in one of their positions, you can actually calculate the position of the other particle because of their interference with each other instantaneously. So it's actually relevant because we can predict Mr. Hipple's position right now. And I know for a fact that he is drinking a Bud Light or a Labatt's.
No, it's a Labatt. It's a Labatt.
He's drinking a Labatt while watching Dead Poet Society, sitting on his couch. But it's, I don't know. I don't know if anyone listened to this ever grasped what I was talking about there with quantum entanglement. Do you guys have questions?
So many.
Ask one.
But not any
Formulated.
We still
ones.
gotta sit on it. Like it's one of those things that you could get taught. You could get taught this by the person who understands it the most. And just because of how extreme and not based on anything we understand it is, it's complicated. You gotta sit on it because it just fundamentally doesn't adhere to any of the logic that we approach life by.
It by nature encourages the idea that randomness is the biggest truth that we have in our life. So like, whereas physics beforehand had that determinism aspect where like everything was set in perpetuation by just like actions taken before us, this by nature says that like everything that happens to us is just a result of a probability table, basically, and the probability of something else happening. And it's not a philosophy. It's just true. And I think that's the hardest part to grapple with, is that we have, like, people at an atomic level have proven that it is true that quantum physics is real, and that quantum mechanics and quantum physics are the same thing. And quantum entanglement is more specifically and it's the most interesting to me, is that the intersection of particles interactions and then divergence and post-divergence are related. So it basically states that everything in this world is related, and there is a reaction to everything. So like, whether it was the Big Bang that started everything, like that instance where everything collided and expanded, that is the moment that we all became entangled with each other. And you can actually, with enough data and with enough observation, can predict the outcome of intersected particles. It gets way more complicated than that, but at the very least, you can, if you see two electrons collide with each other and then 4 million years later, you find one of those electrons, you can collect the data, you can see the moment you observe it and backtrack that to where the electron that it was entangled with is. And a real world aspect of that is coming into existence more and more is and they're already using it, is quantum computing, and more specifically quantum, like banking and like encryption, and it's quantum encryption is what it's called. And so
it's such a nerdy term.
Where does quantum
encryption
computing fit into all of this?
Well, you're digging into computers. That's at the forefront of the technology.
Taquito with his tacuter invented
Dr.
to
Taquito.
quantum. What's that?
To quantum mechanics.
To quantum to
Taquito.
mechanics.
To mechanics.
Quantop gun from the quantop.
Quantum mechanics from the top.
But the idea is that that with banking information, and they do this already with some banks, is that like your information is shot out to you via a quantumly entangled particle, and that information is absorbed by one receptor, and it can interpret what it has received, that particle that is received, and also therefore interpret what the receptor on the other end received. And by linking those two things up, it's the most secure way of securing your data. Is basically it's saying at a quantum speed and in quantum relativity, you can see what particle you received and therefore what particle the other computer received, and that allows you to access the data.
Christ. Skull fuck right there.
Yeah. And it's weird. It's weird how you can know the destiny and the position in the past of something else based on your position, as long as your life has intersected that thing. Those calculations haven't fully been formulated for like larger objects, but for like individual electrons, it exists, and therefore it can eventually exist for.
Are you saying that quantum banking already exists, or is something in the making?
Based on my research, it already exists.
Based on your research?
Isn't too surprising.
Yeah. Based on Quantum J's research. Bobby Quantum Paradise.
Bobby Quantum Mechanics Paradise.
Yeah.
Too cuter.
But yeah, I'm not sure I did justice to that topic as much as I would like to. It's such a crazy thing where it's just, there's so many components to it, where you're talking about at the very start an electron and just kind of where it ends up after shooting it out of a gun, and you eventually start.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So all of this is based on the assumption that, I mean, the way that we started out was electrons behave in a certain manner. But
yeah,
electrons are a part of an atom. Is it then assumed that the atom assumes the behavior of the electron? Like, does the proton and the neutron that also work to create the atom that the electron is also a part of have no effect on the atom's behavior? Because the base theory that we are speaking of here was that we are shooting electrons through two slits at, a wall.
Mm-hmm.
Those are electrons. Those aren't atoms.
Right.
So atoms are to assume the behavior of the electron?
Well, the thing is, it can happen with protons too, and it can happen with neutrons as well. So electrons is an example in that case, but you could shoot protons at a wall and the same thing would happen. Okay. And those are the components of an atom. And one of the things that we experience on a daily basis is the radiation from the sun. And the radiation from the suns are made of hydrogen atoms. And they give off all kinds of different atoms. And that's because there's a bunch of protons bouncing around in there in the sun. This is overly simplistic, but the energy from the sun is basically reliant on the fact that a bunch of protons are in the sun, and protons by nature detract from each other. They repel each other. And it's just like two magnets that repel each other. You would say that those magnets always repel each other, but quantum tunneling predicts that no matter how many times something runs into a wall, an electron or a proton runs into a wall, you would think it would always stop, but there is a probability, because of the probability wavelengths, that it goes through the wall. And so the same thing happens with positive protons, where there is a small probability that they run into each other. And that there's so many collisions in protons and dense gravity going on in a sun where that does end up happening more than you would think. And that gives off some kind of atom that is basically the energy from the sun that we feel. So that's like that is one of the most basic forms of quantum mechanics that we feel every day, is quantum tunneling, is because of that unlikely reaction occurring, because statistically it's unlikely, but there are so many of those reactions happening that it does occur. Yeah.
I got a question. I'm not sure if this relates right now, but I heard when I was young that if you took pencil and you poke it through your finger, because your finger his map of atoms, and there's more negative space than there is space occupied by the actual atoms, that eventually, if you keep poking your finger, the pen or pencil will eventually travel through all the negative space of the atoms. There's always that minute chance that it just pokes through everything, and you could poke through your finger. Is that
you're talking about like
relating
a light
towards-
poke, like you're not stabbing through your finger, right? You're just hoping
I
for
think-
one random
I think,
time where
I think
it just
the better
appears through your
example.
finger.
I think the better example here would be dropping a ball onto a table.
and
There
the
is
chance that it would drop
Every
through
chance that the
table.
ball falls through the table
Right.
Yes.
because of the
There's
negative
not-
space.
So the point of the wavelengths is to predict the probability of something happening. So you look at one of those wavelengths and you see like the peaks, that's the most likely thing to happen, and then you see the falls, and that's the least likely thing to happen. If the ball falling through the table is at one of those follies, but statistically there is a likelihood that it could happen. You would just need millions and thousands of times of dropping that ball in the same exact way to have that occur. And there's a mathematical equation actually that determines randomness, and it's pretty simple. But you can see randomness at that level where there's like no predictability, even when you're dripping from a faucet. So like you turn on that faucet to a certain level, you're going to see a regular drip pattern, like one at a time, right? You're going to have that drip, 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 drip. You turn it up a little more. At some point, it's going to double and it'll drip, 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 drip. But you can get that. You got that drip, baby. But at some point, you're going to get that drip to a point where it fulfills the mathematical equation of the fact that it's absolutely random. Like there's no pattern to it at all. And the point of that is that mathematically there is an equation of distribution basically where you're saying that like once you add, if you have two standard variables, like in the standard of the sink, there's a standard width that the water can come out of, and there's a standard stream that the water can come out at. And if you raise that standard stream to a certain point, you're going to get a randomness. And basically quantum entanglement says that like everything has that randomness in it at some point.
Well, it's
yeah.
certainly a lot to think about.
Certainly not to think about. It's hard to grasp. I'll be posting some pictures this week so that hopefully guys insight that this becomes more clear. But yeah,
What do you
it's
say?
tough to grasp.
Jake, I don't know where to start.
Me either.
Say la
And
vie.
that concludes our new bit called "I Don't Know Where to Start" with Eli and Sean.
We're gonna do that one every week.
Every topic, every week, we're just going to end it with don't know where to start.
If you don't understand what we were talking about there and you have questions, specific questions especially, feel free to reach out to me. MIT has I think it is like 8 weeks of their class posted online. The first
What class
one,
is it? What's the title of the class?
it's called Quantum Physics or Mechanics, but in the first like 5 minutes, he says that those two words are interchangeable.
Quantum Physics
it's-
for Dummies.
Yeah, for dummies. And
Check it out.
I was still too dumb to understand it, but look up double slit experiments. There are people out there that are smarter than me that can explain this stuff, but it's pretty incredible. We've basically proved that either multiple universes exist. I don't know which one's more unsettling to me. Either
Here's a
multiple
question.
universes exist or the observation of something influences its existence.
Here's
I
a
don't know
question.
which one.
Are we ever going to be able to observe the universe that isn't currently happening?
With quantum entanglement, that'd be the trickiest thing ever. Like you would
So-
end up by
There's a million versions of this universe where My left arm is actually up, not my right arm.
Sure.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Are we ever going to be able to physically observe or travel into that universe?
By physically traveling to or observing that universe, you would then be entangling that universe into your future and creating a new universe by seeing it.
So
does that make
the
any
answer
sense?
is no.
By raising your right hand, you have officially made a split between your reality and a reality where a cheek rose his left hand, and you are no longer that cheek, if that makes any sense. But that cheek exists.
How does this affect my day to day? Let's make this relevant. Like, why do I care?
You should care. I don't want to say that it affects religion and a lot of like personal philosophies, but it does. Like determinism, when physics determined determinism, religion adapted to saying like, all right, determinism is real because God chose your path from the beginning. Like it was kind of easy for religion to say that it's adaptable, but then all of a sudden quantum physics says no, everything is really freaking random. So if you're being willingly ignorant, there's always going to be shit you can't explain in science. And even within quantum mechanics, there's the best quantum physicists say, I'm the best because I can acknowledge that I don't know everything. But it affects your day-to-day life because you do have control over your life, but it's interesting to know that every decision you make has a weird consequence with a version of you that also happened. So like I think about this a lot ever since I started studying this. Like I'll be at a stop sign and then I'll turn right and I'll see someone who like slows down a little slower at the other junction of the stop sign. I say, what if that person decided to just go straight through? And in quantum entanglement, there is a version of life where that person did. And I think full-heartedly, if I had to pick a religion or make a religion right now, that the real religion would be that like you die in just about every 3 moments. And the version of you that is still alive that you're experiencing right now is just the winner. And like quite possibly death is kind of like this illusion that you're running away from at all times.
That's where my mind goes to a lot when I think about the whole thing of determinism, and my mind sprouts to these different avenues of, say like there's a red light or something and it cuts off right before, and you either decide to hit the gas or hit the brakes, and say you see a car speed through at the last second, and you go, what if I hit the gas and I was in a collision with that? Ooh, that was a close one. Like anytime in real life you get like a close experience, my mind jumps to, whoa, what if I did do that? And then it jumps to, wow, is there an alternate universe where that did happen? And did I just die in an alternate universe?
Well, the idea is that the less energy the split in realities takes to bring into existence. So like, if you're like, what if I was president right now? You'd have to go back thousands of decisions to a point where you could then develop forward to become president. That's less likely. That's what they would call a low wavelength reality. But in those situations where you stop at the stop sign, you stop a little late and someone zooms by you, or you didn't look over your shoulder when you pulled out of your parking spot type of thing. Those kinds of things are very high wavelength probabilities. And that's where multiple universes really realistically come into existence, because all those decisions that led up to that, and that decision specifically, have basically dictated that you are observing this one. And the only reason you're observing this one is because you didn't observe the other one. And it's like Schrodinger's cat experiment. Like, you could open that box and pick up a live cat, or you open that box and that cat's dead because the 50% probability of that decaying atom came true. You have to obey by the laws of physics reasonably still, but within those, quantum physics is basically universally possible.
Does this
I feel
tie
like
into
quantum
it all?
physics is just an excuse to say that anything's possible.
It's not a full-on excuse to say that. It's basically saying that we have proved that electrons or protons
There's a
or
universe
neutrons,
where I figured out how to teleport from point A to point B.
that's very low wavelength in terms of quantum physics.
So-
That's like,
Going along with that, do people who accept quantum entanglement and this theory of quantum whatever, do they accept certain laws of nature that we've accepted or not real? Like, is there a universe where I am the Wolverine? Like,
no. So that's what I'm saying. There are still rules of physics and nature and law and things like that. These variabilities in terms of worlds are universes or whatever you want to call it are solely based on individual decisions and how they could branch off. So like back to the right arm experience, that is very physiologically possible. That there's no one saying that you couldn't do that at that moment. And so therefore, at the same time you raised your left hand, and at the same time you didn't raise any hands, and at the same time you rose both hands, and that created 4 branches of reality just right there. And by doing that, then you have a reality where you raise your right hand, and the consequences, they never converge again. You're automatically right there, 4 different people. And now Cheek, you're 17 different people. And Cheek, now you're 27 different people. Now you're 45 different people, Cheek. But
E,
the
stop,
point is that
wake up back there, E. You're fucking falling asleep, you fucking loser.
Man, I'm following the trail of thought that you can't even comprehend right now, Cheek.
tell us.
Yeah, tell us.
Help Cheek
Well,
comprehend.
well.
Give us a reality where Cheek comprehends what you're thinking.
All right, imagine a reality where Cheek isn't knee deep in his own ass. Do you guys think
we're
about
following
worm?
laws of nature. I can't be in my own ass. We just went through that. E.
Cheek,
Were you
you've got a lot of surgery done.
There's a couple decisions ago in your life cycle, Cheek. It was your parents' decision to mate with worms.
It's not fully thought out,
Formulated.
so I'm not ready
All
to
right, listen,
engage
we'll come
with it.
back to you. Go to sleep. Think about it again. Jet. Jay, where does the line of reason stop? I decided in high school to fuck off and be a B student. But what if in reality I was like a Nicholas Cochin or a Matt Leverage, where I became really smart and then went to Harvard. And then I made decisions at Harvard where I learned how to explore space. And then while exploring space, I met aliens and I learned all, like, where does the like...
Those are logical progressions. You're very far, like you're talking about something that was branched off a very long time ago, right? Like you're talking about like a very different life that would have had to start a long time ago. So
maybe
that
for
is
me, but maybe not for somebody else.
Well, that kind of example is more easy to see in a younger person or even in their parents, where like you're like, Cheek, this is the most direct this example comes into play is at the atomic level. So there was the most likely chance for you to be the first child, the Ryan, like yeah, there is. You could have been BJ's brother.
I am BJ's brother.
You could have been.
You ask who BJ's brother is, you ask him I'm his brother.
But the point is that like at a young those drastic decisions, there's not many things that are going to be like a decision that you make today that logically, physically, socially, normally would affect you into becoming the president or becoming a space guy. Same way with Eli and die. Like, there's nothing we could do that would imminently today make us astronauts outside of maybe like a decision to become the oldest astronaut ever to go to space and like commit right now.
So,
but if
free
you want to
will
imagine,
is only applicable because it's the most probable, but it's not entirely true.
yeah,
free will
I would say
is what it is because it's. Hold on, I'm trying to figure out how to word this.
there's free will in the point of being an observer, but you're not inventing anything new by being an observer. You know what I'm saying? Like, you, by observing something, you create something and you manifest something into your world, but you didn't invent it. You're not as free as you think, right? Like, it was a possibility to start. And so this argument, I think, can both support and negate religion. It can both support and negate what is it? Fucking simulation theory. It says basically that anything is possible within the moment of decision at a simplification level, where you're just saying like, I can make any decision right now. And when I do make that decision, other decisions are made by different versions of me that go off and split off into different universes. And those might have butterfly consequences.
Can you expand on that? Can you expand on free will? How'd you get there again?
Free will.
What's your
guys' perception of free will, I guess?
I guess my perception of free will is that there is limited free will. Yes, you can make whatever decisions you want in life, but your reality is the most common decision that was made of all the possibilities, or the most likely decision to be made of all potential possibilities. So, while free will isn't necessarily a representation of choice, it's a representation of possibility of happening. And your choices are simply the most likely choices to have been made by what's all happening. Does that make sense?
I get what you're saying, but I would actually say the opposite. Like, wouldn't you say that the most probable events of happening would actually be the least of your choice? Like,
no,
choosing against the highest probability would actually be the least common choice. So if 5 JJs are likely to raise the right hand.
It's choice isn't the right word. It's
you're right.
Of option that's happening, of potential outcome. There isn't choice. There is just probable outcome of the next decision or event, or however you want to describe it.
You're absolutely right about that. And I grapple with that because it's like,
where we never know where we lie on that wavelength of that spectrum of probability, but more than likely you're right in your fucking slit.
Yeah, statistically you're in the slit. Exactly right, Cheek. I feel like you've kind of understood this from the start.
And I know that I'm in the slit because nothing wild is happening besides the fact that E is asleep over there in the corner.
Well, E, I think this might be a good time for you to quantumly mechanize our brains by ripping off your hair.
No. Yeah. Okay. It's time. It's time. For those on YouTube watching, this is the moment of simulation.
I
took the net off too.
No.
Simulation moment. Was it awake this whole time? Or did Eli actually grow it? You don't know until you see.
appreciate the dedication, and I'll tell you what. It got to a point where I 100% knew it was a wig, but it took a lot longer than I thought it would.
Yeah.
That's quantum mechanics, baby.
That's quantum mechanics.
That's quantum entanglement.
It's good to be back. I hope you guys understood at least a little bit of that. I think that we reached more understanding at the end. Sheik, what I wanted to happen was we get to this point where you know enough to ask questions like you are now, and I just wasn't good enough at explaining it to get us there soon enough. But in other news, I think this is going to be split into 2 episodes.
The definition of quantum entanglement is the infinite possibilities of separate realities that come from atoms behaving in a completely random way that we cannot guarantee.
Exactly. And the thing is that there's always a point for us to be able to know what's going on. There's always a point of start. Consider that the paintball gun or the thing that shoots out the electrons. And there's always a point that we have to observe. And we can only base the observation statistics based on the point that was ejected from. We can always only base the point that was ejected from based on a reality that we observed. So it's just like compounding exponential experience.
Let's talk about this. Hold on real quick. Observation alone creates a different outcome than expected.
It creates a branch, basically. So,
but
remember
we only know what we observe. How do we know how something operates if we are under the assumption that whatever happens because we watched it happens? What if we're not watching anything happen? How do we know anything is operating under the same fundamentals than what we're assuming it would operate under if we weren't observing? We're observing under some level. Mm-hmm. Whether it's at the observation point or from an omniscient viewpoint. Mm-hmm. So what's the rule or law that is to make me assume that the jump from observation point and omniscient observation would not affect outcome of said experiment? I'm sure that could be phrased better, but I know you know what I mean.
Yeah, you're saying basically like if there was an omniscient, there's got to be someone else observing.
We're always observing.
Are we an observation point? Is someone observing us and that's why we exist? Type of thing. And like, are we in? So the crux of what you're asking is the crux of this question. How do we know that? How do we know that what we're observing isn't the only thing that's happening? And the reason we can do that is because when we observe, it boils back down to that electron experiment with the double slits. And when we observe, thousands of them get shot through the different slits, you see thousands of outcomes of where they can land, but in a noticeable pattern. But when you observe one of the slits where it goes through, the pattern gets diluted to only the atoms that go through that slit. So the possibilities are limited.
What if our observation of this circumstance is another slit of another observation bubble?
Absolutely. That could absolutely be true. That's an extreme version.
That's the inception of quantum entanglement.
Yeah,
exactly.
That was quantum inception for sure.
Yeah, who's doing research on quantum inception? Let me talk to them.
Leo DiCaprio is.
Cheek, you're gonna have to be the forefront of that one. I don't know, but the reason that for a fact that we know that other things are happening is because I'm going to try to briefly skim over this black and white thing, but we've observed that through a box, atoms come out black and white. This isn't true. This is it's an example. It's an example. It's the example I saw on the lecture. So through a box, atoms come out black and white. You observe, if you're doing that for the purpose of just looking at the white particles, because you wouldn't know until the observation box came into play, you're like, all right, I want to take the white particles and I want to then see if those white particles that come out are hard or soft. And then you just take the soft particles out of that split box and you throw them back into a color operator. Those colors become then 50-50 black and white, even though logically no black particles went into that box in the first place. Those particles come out 50-50 black and white out of that color box because the latest point of observation kind of reset on a quantum level, on an atomic level, what can actually be true. You can't, the way wavelengths work is that you can't know those two variables at the same time. You can only know one based on the most recent point of observation.
I don't know if I buy it.
Well, it's just true, but but yeah, I don't know. It's a lot, and I don't get it. From what I can tell, no one understands it fully. Like even the leaders of these theories, like the multi-world theories or the Copenhagen theory, these people don't actually know. Like they don't know everything. They can predict enough, and their predictions basically all, no matter which theory you behind, lead to that there is a randomness to the universe that you can only predict the probability of and not necessarily the actual location. And it is as simple as location of electrons. It is that simple because when you boil that down, the location of electron determines what atom it is, because the number of electrons in its ring depend on how much energy it gives off and what atom it is. And when it comes down to it, that randomness at that atomic level makes major implications.
I feel you.
Thank you for
feeling
me. Yeah, that's gonna definitely be a two-parter. We went deep into that one.
Any big notes, E?
No,
You
I have a train of thought, but I still don't know how to phrase it in the big picture of things, and I don't know if it's going to go anywhere, so I'd rather not bring it up. But
that's pretty
we
soft,
rather you would.
All right, well, it relates to, I guess, your personal opinion of where the world is headed. Are you a cynic? Do you think that we are going to blow things up as a species, or do you think that, love will prevail and that we can actually work as a successful species on the planet? And where in that do you think free will ties into determinism? Do you think that we all still have a chance to have a say in things, or do you think that things are set out as predetermined?
Well, that's the ultimate argument, is that an argument for determinism or free will? And I don't know. For me,
there should be a third definition there. It should be probabilism, because at least the conclusion that I think I've come to is there are a million possibilities. Your reality is more than likely just the most probable one.
Yeah.
You can make all the decisions in the world that you want, but probably those are the most likely ones for you to make anyway. So it's all just the most probable thing that's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I think leans towards determinism.
I would say so. And before I talked about this, I would have actually been leaning towards. Before I talked about this, I'd actually been leaning towards free will. But
me too.
The more you talk about it, and the more you describe it in that way, and the more I talk about it, it's if life is really coming down to probabilities, how else can you say it other than it's determinism, right?
You can't.
Like if
You
literally
have free. There is free will, but free will operates outside of reality, of your own reality. Our reality is more than likely just our perception of the most likely thing to happen.
well, there's a prediction that's says
not free will.
There's a prediction that says if you took a test and you come back the next day, teacher hands everyone's tests face down on your desks. There's a prediction that says the way you flip that over determines what your test results is.
Like your mindset in flipping it
That
over?
doesn't make any sense to me.
Anything.
I flip that bottom to top. That means I know all the answers.
And no. This example is more theoretical, but it can apply to real things. Like there are still truths in our universe, right? So like taking a test, you're going to answer the right or wrong answers. You didn't like black out and then answer it, and then you're hoping now that the blackout you did answer them right. But there's a theory that certain mundane or non-deterministic things like the cat experiment, where something else is controlling the outcome, that your way of observation also controls the result that you observe. So like with the atom that's decomposing, there's a 50% chance that it decomposes, a 50% chance that it doesn't. The 50% chance that it does also occurs at the same time that the 50% doesn't, which means at the same time the cat is killed and is not killed, right? We talked about that. And you flipping over the box, there's 50-50 chance that you do that. And that mixed with the 50-50 chance that the cat is dead. You don't, that's not based on something you know. That's not based on something you learned. That you're just taking that box off. So there has to be something innocuous about taking that box off that leads to the observation of either a dead or a live cat.
It's frustrating to talk about.
It's unsettling to talk about because everything we've ever learned in our lives is definite and like.
Nah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it is.
Science-wise, I mean.
We're taught to perceive that it's definite.
Yeah, like chemistry, physics, science, math, all that shit is definite. There's interpretations.
I'm outta here, guys. Good to see you. I just gotta pee.
Oh. Well, can you take enough time to sign off? I feel like we've covered enough.
Have we covered enough? I'm also down to talk longer. If we're going to talk longer, I just need a pee break.
All right. Let's take a PP number 3. P3.
It's a second pee break. Maybe Eli can wake up.
Hey, why don't you get off my bedtime schedule?
We had a more productive conversation there, but I'm still concerned. I am a big fan of Cheek's Christmas tree in the background. I'm excited to play WEP later. But I don't know if we'll play with them.
We should start posting on the forums. What accounts should we make? SHA Acolyte number 1.
Acolyte. We need more ziggurats. Oh. The Hannah?
Oh, so good.
Mm-hmm. Oh boy.
I felt like he was asleep that whole time.
He was.
He said nothing. It was me and you having a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
What was that?
I don't know, we gotta wait till he comes back. That little dingus. Let me see what he wrote. I don't know. Cheek, I appreciate you being a participant in my conversation.
It was fun. It was tough to get there, though.
Yeah. I wish I flipped it on its head. Started with the biggest implications first.
You can always do that.
What do you mean?
Edit it so that you present that first.
I'll see how it falls together, see if that'd be easy, but
Yeah, falls
Kind of
together. That's all I gotta do.
also not a huge proponent of like lying about the order of things.
Fair.
Like, it'll still be fine, especially since we're gonna split in half. Two digestible parts about learning. All right. Cheek. E. How we feeling?
Hola, amigo.
E. Are you
I'm feeling
engaged?
great.
It's hard because anytime we start talking, something clicks and I start chasing down this like rabbit hole avenue of thoughts. You know, if this, then that, then this, then that.
Mm-hmm.
And then next thing I know, you know, I hit a wall and then I chase down another and the same thing. It's a hard thing to think through in a way that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like it's a lot of, we don't know enough to be able to like sit on one part of it for a long time. So we're always like chasing a certain aspect of it down. And I do the same thing.
Hold on there. You say we don't know enough, but a lot of the times when we're talking about this, you talk as though everything that we say is a definite fact. It's a fact. I guarantee.
Well, quantum entanglement is a truth, and these probability outcomes and observation of them.
But let's be clear. Let's be clear with our listeners here. A truth, something that you say is a truth, doesn't necessarily make it true. The only things in scientific community that I feel are accepted throughout the world are what we call laws. There is no law of quantum entanglement. So let's talk realistically with the belief about the theories that we're discussing right now.
Well, quantum physics are a scientific law.
What's the law?
Tell
Tell me the law.
So in the slit experiment, for example, the observation mechanisms, like, because obviously you can't watch electrons pass or hit anything. The
like,
observation
I know the law
mechanism.
of gravity. How come I don't know the law of slit theory?
Well, the inventor of the law of gravity has been actually disproven by the quantum mechanics science that has been coming out. But it was also a building block. But the laws come in where it's retestable with different materials, with different testing devices by different countries, by different labs, like that's where the law comes into effect.
So gravity's not a law.
Gravity's a law.
You just told me it wasn't, though.
Well, gravity is a basic of physics. Newton was the one who discovered gravity. And he took gravity and extrapolated that to a lot more than just gravity. He was one of the biggest founders of physics, and he took physics on. And he's not wrong by any of his physics, but the decided certainty on the laws he created is what has been put into question by quantum physics, and basically saying that like even Einstein has been disproved at this point about his theories of where quantum physics is going. And like the title of that movie about Stephen Hawking, The Theory of Everything, that is actually a legitimate theory of quantum physics that is saying basically how our world is decided in a weird way. And so like quantum physics is a truth, but there are theories about quantum physics like the multiple worlds theory or the Copenhagen theory. Those are theories that explain the gaps that we don't understand.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make a lot of sense. It's one of those things where if you don't think about it, it works maybe, and then if you start to think about it, it works less, and then if you really, really, really think about it and understand it fully, then it works. But none of us are there yet. So I don't know. It's tough. It's a weird thing, and I wish I could do a better job on it. And I really thought I could circumnavigate the problem enough to make it seem important, and it is important, but like I thought I could wrap our heads around it to a point where it made sense. But honestly, the result of this has been that it makes less sense to me after talking about it, which kind of seems like the sense that I get from it because I've listened to multiple quantum physicists talk about it with certainty, and the things beyond, like the slit experiment and Schrodinger's cat experiment, those things are factual nearly. The things beyond that are sometimes theoretical, and those people, even these top physicists, disagree. And I was listening to this one guy who was like belittling, like literally making jokes and belittling these other physicists who believed other ways, and his audience was laughing with him. It was like a roast of the other physicists in quantum mechanics, and it's like it's become a competitive thing in that regard.
So
it's so golden.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see a YouTube video of physicists going at it.
I can bring you a gray hair guy.
Look at this idiot actually believing in free will.
That's the thing. He's like, oh, these, like, you could replace observation with crazy magic. Like, that was something he said. And it's just like
such a nerdy punchline.
He would like overly simplify these super advanced mathematics that these other physicists would come upon just to like manipulate other people into thinking that his way was better.
Yeah, prove their point.
Yeah, and it's just it was funny.
But my question is, so when I asked about laws beforehand, there are agreed upon rules of physics within the realm of science, and that's what we define as laws.
So everything is agreed upon.
What you're talking about now is two people not agreeing upon theories that either are accepted or are not accepted based on those laws.
So everyone agrees that atoms at this point are not actually at a fixed location until you observe them. Everyone agrees that there's a probability of where you might see them.
Does everyone agree that mass is pulled to another mass based on like the weight of that mass?
Yeah, all these theories that I've been talking about have had no concepts of relativity. Like when you're talking about shooting atoms into a wave pattern, this could have been over the period of 7 months. Like, it has nothing to do with them interacting with each other. What is actually happening is that these things are occurring in a superposition until someone observes them. And everyone agrees with that. So everyone agrees that electrons have a probability of location, speed, that kind of thing. Everyone agrees that that is not finite, that you can't track that down. What people disagree upon, what the theories vary, are what happens between the probability and the collapsing of the parabola, basically. So what happens between knowing kind of the wavelength of possibilities of where this thing could be, and then upon observing it and knowing where it is. And so Copenhagen says that your observation of this atom brings it into existence at that place, given the probability. That's the one this gray-haired dude was making fun of, saying that magic happens when you observe it. But it's his observation is not discounted. This guy just had a different observation and really wanted to sell his view. Einstein's has been mostly discounted because everything he worked towards in his life didn't have any calculation of quantum mechanics or quantum physics. And then all of a sudden it was introduced and he had to try to rationalize it. And it's not crazy to think that maybe there's some other factors that we don't understand playing into these wavelengths. And maybe we actually could determine where they would end up once we knew those factors. But
like, for example, we don't even know what gravity comes from.
Right, exactly. So Einstein's thing is basically saying that, like, back in the day when you flipped a coin, you would have no idea whatever would land, heads or tails. But if you had nowadays, if we saw someone about to flip a coin with the proper physicists and the proper dynamics and like someone looking at it with a slow motion camera, they could probably predict before it landed what it was going to be, heads or tails, based on physics.
No, wasn't Einstein's thing mass? It was gravity.
No, that was Newton.
An object at rest will stay at rest.
Newton was gravity. The apple fell on Newton's head.
Did it?
Yeah, Einstein is the theory of relativity. That's his big thing. He did speed of light, things like that. So Einstein, that was his thing. Like, relativity almost built up to quantum physics, but then the discovery of quantum physics almost contradicted it. So then he tried to rationalize it within what he knew, and it's not proven that he was wrong, but it's like accepted that it's probably not exact what he thought about this. But it was basically that he was saying that there are things we don't understand, but with his factoring of that, somehow it would say that information was traveling faster than the speed of light. It's beyond me in that case. But then the one that's what I've seen on the internet mostly accepted and that I like the most is the multi-world theory. So that one's saying it's a lot like Copenhagen, where once you observe something, it occurs in that specific place. But at the same time, it's also occurring in every other probable place that it could exist based on the function. And that's the multiple worlds theory.
I don't want to open up a whole nother egg basket, but when you think of multiverses, do you think that every single option exists at once, or do you think that there's only a limited amount of options, just like how our universe is expanding? There can only be so many options, or do you think that it's just like an infinite web where you have every single universe for every single option that ever happened and branches off from there? Does that get talked about at all?
Yeah, I've watched some people who talk about like how first of all, like conservation of energy. How could one electron be split into so many possibilities, you know, in terms of energy? How could that happen?
I'd love to have Robin on for this talk.
It'd be good to talk.
Our alien boy.
Talk to Robin about this. The other one is like, is literally everything possible? Like, is there a reality where like I have a jetpack in my butthole and I'm like flying around and going to Candyland planet and that kind of
That's
thing?
what I
And,
asked
like,
you earlier.
Yeah, and that's not like for the most part, people say the multi-world theory, even that where almost everything is possible, that's not possible because you still have to be following the rules of our known universe, you know? It's
But if you
things like
take
raising your right hand versus your left hand and what the butterfly of
But
that
if you
is.
take the butterfly effect and you apply that to something super early on, as soon as, I don't know, you get the butterfly effect of things expanding upon, you know, say someone discovered what the graviton or like what the particle for gravity is early in humanity based off of like a random decision, like someone raised their right hand instead of left. I know somewhere you get that butterfly effect of something actually meaningful. You don't know where that's going to lead to.
Right. But
it could be as simple as like the meteor hitting the planet and destroying dinosaurs. Like we had to have a totally different world if they weren't extinct.
And there is an existence where that didn't happen.
And that's a super drastic change.
But
so I don't think you can rule anything that extreme out as butthole jetpacks.
I don't want to rule out butthole jetpacks, but I would say that physics still apply and evolution still apply, and there's other sciences that still apply. Like quantum mechanics doesn't wipe everything out. So if the meteor doesn't hit, yeah, that's a different world, but that doesn't necessarily mean that even humans come into existence if the meteor hits, you know? Like that could just mean the ecosystem balances out at something else. Like maybe plants become overly toxic and kill everyone off, or the soil becomes more fertile for foods that T-Rexes eat and they begin thriving, you know? And
okay, I want to talk about something way more important.
Butthole jetpacks?
In the multiverse where you can travel between verses, and there's a multiverse that may be our universe where the next Spider-Man movie from Marvel is a multiverse movie where Tobey Maguire and the other dude also come in to Tom Holland's Spider-Man universe. Can we talk about that? How dope would that be?
that is happening.
I want bloodshed.
We speculate that that's happening, but
No, it's confirmed. They've said that Tom Holland and Tobey Maguire, or not Tom Holland and, well, yes, Tom Holland, Tobey Maguire, and Andrew Garfield are confirmed for the next Spider-Man movie.
listen,
They're going to do a Spider-Verse thing.
Anything, it's that Disney does a phenomenal job of either hiding or misleading information about what's happening. I want nothing more than that to happen. But
Jamie Foxx has been signed.
Take this for example. Did you know? Hold on. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
I think my earphones are about to die. I got a beep. Are you up to date on The Mandalorian?
Yep.
Who knew? No one. Did you? That Luke Skywalker was in the final episode of this season of Mandalorian?
Spoiler. Yeah. I didn't hear that.
No one saw that coming.
But reports like this person is signed on for the movie are never really lied about.
It can just be it's like, oh, we're trying to fake you out. Listen,
there's no way.
I want it. I want to believe it. I just can't believe it. I just
Fair enough.
At this point, I can't be like, yeah, that's definitely going to happen.
My guess is that Tom Holland, Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, those two are just kind of like people that he happens to pass by in some kind of hijinks in the movie.
No.
And
if they're doing it, everyone's shooting webs.
Yeah.
I hope so.
I think so, at least.
Will you crunch some numbers on that tequila? Will you tell me how old Tobey Maguire is?
He's old.
I want I want all of them to be outshined by Toby. I want Toby to just take the front stage, kick everyone else to the dirt, and it's just like a whole nother spin-off of the old Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans.
Well, like he has a minor
45, damn.
Oh, look at this picture of him.
It's not a very pleasant photo of him.
It's like they make the video, they make the movie, and then they but like Toby has some line in it that everyone just like loves so much, and they just petition to Marvel. And they say, like, we love Toby's line. Like, we need more Toby. We forgot how good Toby was. They bring him back, and all of a sudden, Toby kills Tom Holland in some future Spider-Man movie.
Yeah.
And he's the new Spider-Man. I could totally agree with that outcome. James Franco comes back to life. Well, he's alive, but his character...
They wouldn't do any of that. It would literally just be dragging the other Spider-Mans into Tom Holland's universe.
Of all the different multiverses and avenues that life could turn out with, I wish it was something so mundane and meaningless where it wasn't like dinosaurs continue to exist or we got butthole jetpacks, but it was just like some boring shit like Tobey Maguire had the franchise on all the Spider-Mans for the rest of his life.
That's the only different universe that exists.
That's the universe
like, that's our special universe.
Yeah.
The universe
Tobey
I want to
Maguire.
live in. Tobey Maguire thrived after Spider-Man 3 and was catapulted into the most incredible actors universe that could ever happen.
Eventually, all the nations combined to make a universal law that Tobey Maguire is the only person that can act in any movie ever again.
The first globally funded movie.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, I double checked with my computer. These they're gonna die very soon. So
all right, let's sign off.
Either we
let's
should sign off or we can go until these die. I don't care.
Let's do sexy boy chem kisses until your earphones die.
Girl.
Oh, girl. You know, girl.
Hey, baby.
Corn on the cob.
Baby. Girl.
Oh, girl.
I live in a universe
Never stop.
that off the cob, baby.
Loving you.
All
Girl.
right. Thanks for coming back to season 3. I hope you enjoy everything we put out this season. This is a wild ride, and obviously at this point you've listened to season 3 episode 1 and season 3 episode 1.5 because we're going to split this one in half. But we hope you have a fantastic ride, and happy Chinese New Year, I guess.
Happy Chinese New Year.